Welcome to IVF This, episode 204, IVF and Symptom Spotting.
Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go.
Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you're all doing so well today. We're talking symptom spotting today. That's what we're talking about because if you've been a part of this community really for any length of time, you will have engaged in some symptom spotting. And I want to approach this conversation with so much tenderness and compassion because if you have gone through IVF, infertility, the 2-week wait, transfers, IUIs, timed intercourse cycles, pregnancy after loss, you have undoubtedly engaged in some symptom spotting. You probably Googled, 4 days post 5-day transfer cramping, no symptoms, 7-day post ovulation, implantation signs, sore breast but negative test. Is this a good sign? Is this a bad sign? You've probably laid in bed analyzing every single sensation throughout your body, every cramp, every twinge, every headache, wave of nausea, absence of nausea, sore breasts, absence of soreness in your breast, every spotting episode, every time you quote unquote felt different, and I know you know what I mean by that, and every time you didn't feel different. And I think one of the hardest parts about symptom spotting is that many of us know we're doing it while we're doing it. Like we're simultaneously analyzing the symptom and annoyed with ourselves for analyzing the symptom, if you track that. And I really want to say very clearly from the absolute beginning, you are not crazy, you are not dramatic, you are not weak, you are not failing at IVF because you can't or feel like you can't seem to stop checking or spotting your symptoms. What you are doing makes sense. So today I want to talk about symptom spotting through the lens of what in therapy we would call hypervigilance. What hypervigilance actually is, why the nervous system does it, and why IVF creates the perfect conditions for it. And finally, why symptom spotting can slowly begin to kind of snuff out your light during this process. Not because you're doing something morally wrong, but because constant surveillance, even on your own body, is exhausting. Because I don't think symptom spotting is really about symptoms. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit about symptoms, but I don't think it's really about it. I think it's really about uncertainty. Hypervigilance is essentially when the nervous system remains dialed up to 11 on high alert, constantly scanning for danger, change, information, prediction, and or safety cues. It's the brain trying to stay ahead of potential pain, trying to reduce surprise, trying to predict outcomes before they happen. IVF creates an almost perfect environment for hypervigilance because this process is high stakes, deeply uncertain, emotionally vulnerable, and full of intermittent reinforcement. And I'll talk about what that means in a minute. Sometimes tiny details do matter in IVF. Hormone levels matter, lining checks matter, follicle counts matter, timing matters. So the brain learns, pay attention closely. Not just pay attention, closely pay attention, right? And then the body itself slowly becomes part of the monitoring system. The body stops feeling like a home and starts feeling like evidence. And that shift is profound within our relationship to ourselves, right? Because now every sensation carries emotional meaning. A cramp becomes, maybe it worked. No cramping becomes, maybe it failed. Sore breasts become, this feels promising. No sore breasts become, I knew it. And what makes this especially difficult is that symptom spotting is not irrational. That's important. And I need you to hear that, because a lot of times people will shame ourselves for it. Like I used to get annoyed with myself for constantly symptom spotting. I need to stop Googling. I'm being so obsessive. I'm doing it again. I promised myself I would stop symptom spotting, or whatever it is, right? We try to make deals with ourselves. But infertility literally trains people into body surveillance. You pee on sticks, you track ovulation, you analyze hormone levels, you count days past ovulation, you count days past transfers, monitor discharge, monitor temperatures, monitor bleeding, monitor response rates. So the brain learns paying close attention might help me stay safe. And honestly, sometimes symptom spotting does temporarily soothe anxiety. Not because it's changing the outcome or anything, but because it gives the nervous system something to do with the uncertainty. Hypervigilance often functions as an attempt at self-regulating uncertainty. And I think it becomes even more intense after emotional injury, after failed cycles, loss, miscarriage, chemical pregnancies, traumatic beta calls, cycles where we had all the symptoms and it still failed. Cycles where we had no symptoms and it worked. Because eventually, the brain starts desperately searching for a pattern that may not actually exist. And this is where symptom spotting can become incredibly consuming, because now the nervous system starts believing, if I can figure this out early enough, maybe I can emotionally prepare. And I think that's one of the hidden functions of symptom spotting. It's not just reassurance seeking, it's grief prevention, it's emotional bracing, it's trying to solve an outcome before the outcome arrives, as if knowing sooner somehow would make it hurt less. And my God, does that make sense? Of course your brain wants to know. Of course it wants certainty. Of course it wants and feels like it needs clues, especially if you've been blindsided before, especially if hope feels dangerous, especially if your nervous system has learned that disappointments arrive without warning. Prediction starts to feel safer than surprise, because there's also a cost to living in constant surveillance. And that's because symptom spotting steals our presence. You can become so busy monitoring life that you stop living it. You stop watching the movie because you're thinking about implantation. You stop enjoying dinner because you're analyzing cramps. You stop inhabiting your body because you're interrogating it constantly. And I think this is where we need to zoom out culturally for just a moment. Because for many women, IVF is not the first time we've been taught to monitor our bodies constantly. Many of us were raised in a culture that taught us to scrutinize, analyze, track, and evaluate our bodies from a very young age. And I don't want to overly detour into like diet culture here, but I do think it matters that we acknowledge that many women entered IVF already exhausted from a lifetime of watching themselves. IVF didn't create the habit of body surveillance for most of us, if not all of us. It simply gave that surveillance higher emotional stakes. And I think that's the part of why symptom spotting hooks us so deeply. Because for women, the body has long been treated as a project, as a problem to solve, something to optimize, something to evaluate, something to manage. And I think IVF can intensify that relationship dramatically, because now the body becomes a lab, becomes a test site, prediction machine, a source of clues, instead of a place where we actually live. And this is the part of the episode where I don't want to give you tips and tricks to stop symptom spotting. Because honestly, I don't think the goal is to become someone who never notices symptoms. I don't think that that's reasonable. I think the deeper invitation right now is to slowly rebuild a relationship with your body that is not exclusively based on monitoring, prediction, or performance. That's it. To start gently exploring the difference between the body as a project and the body as a home. Because a project is constantly evaluated. A home is inhabited. Projects are managed. Homes are lived in. And I think many women were taught to look at their bodies before they ever learned how to live inside them. And please hear me. This is not a switch you flip overnight, especially not in IVF, especially not in a process that genuinely asks you to pay attention to your body. This is not about becoming perfectly embodied and zen and never Googling symptoms again. I could never live up to that standard. Never once. Could not be me, right? This is simply an invitation to begin asking, can I sometimes be with my body instead of constantly trying to extract information from it? Can there be moments where my body is allowed to exist without being interpreted? Can I occasionally let a sensation be a sensation instead of a prophecy? Can I have moments where I'm not surveilling myself? And maybe, hopefully, slowly, over time, can my body begin to feel a little bit more like a place that I live instead of a problem I'm constantly trying to solve? Because hypervigilance can protect us from surprise. It can. But it also protects us from presence. And my beautiful friends, you deserve presence too. You deserve moments where your entire emotional life is not held hostage by every sensation in your body. You deserve moments of laughter, connection, rest, music, sunlight, conversation, peace, even when uncertainty still exists. And if you are symptom spotting right now, if you're Googling, checking, analyzing, monitoring, spiraling, trying to solve this before it arrives, please know this. Your nervous system is trying to protect you. Of course it is. This process has taught you that tiny details carry enormous meaning. But your life is bigger than surveillance. And your body deserves to be inhabited, not interrogated. And that maybe that's where healing begins. Not in never noticing, that's not realistic, but in slowly remembering that you are allowed to live here too. Okay, that is what I have for you this week, my beautiful friends. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.